Welcome, folks, to another one. All you people still listening to the podcast, thank you for doing so. If you're watching live, thank you. I am wearing a hat because I have no haircut. And we are now getting to the business end of this lockdown where I'm starting to fall apart, folks. I'm joking. I'm not. I'm okay. And lots of us are doing the most we can, right? And so today's episode is really about personal development. We've got a great guest who I think is going to help us through just how we make the most out of lockdown. You'll remember when lockdown first happened, lots of people online saying, if you don't come out singing, if you don't come out learning to play the saxophone, or with multiple streams of income, you've messed up, right? And I was one of the people trying to dodge that because I've got lots of interest that I've never really focused on. But I'm hoping David, who's our special guest today, will be able to take us through just how we make the most of lockdown. He's super interested. I'm gonna invite him in a minute. But before I do that, just want to welcome you to this podcast. If it's your first time listening, do consider subscribing, liking, joining, all that good stuff. Now, this podcast is brought to you by the Commentators Network. If you don't know, that's a news network based in the UK where we try and expose people to multiple perspectives, right? So left wing, right wing, old, young, we bring them all together and we give them a chance to learn from each other and to discuss and to debate. So on our YouTube channel, on our website, you'll see lots of different articles with multiple perspectives. So if you're interested in, not having to open up the Daily Mail in one tab and the Mirror in the other and the Guardian in one, and you want a place where you can get different perspectives, then do check out tcsnetwork.co.uk. 3 articles I want to draw your attention to on the website right now. One is about Meghan Markle. The article did really well yesterday, but it's about Meghan Markle winning her privacy case against the Mail on Sunday. It is our feature spread. You can check it out right now. You remember that the Mail on Sunday posted her letter, the letter she wrote to her father, which the High Courts have deemed it was unlawful. They shouldn't have done that, right? And you remember as well that the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, equally got damages from, I think it was the Mirror a few weeks ago as well. This sets a precedent, folks. Newspapers can't just print whatever they want. They can't just do whatever they want. There are consequences for their actions. So if you're interested in that story, it's the feature spread on tcsnetwork.co.uk. The second story, which is really interesting, it's all about Joe Biden's stimulus package, right? And the $1,400, what that means for Americans, right? What that will actually mean for Americans. Of course, we know that Donald Trump is currently undergoing, the second impeachment trial. Interesting to know, actually, that this comes out on the Monday, this podcast. So if you listen to this, good morning, happy Monday, good evening, whatever. We should also know today whether he's going to be impeached or not, because the quicker this gets out of the way, the quicker we can move to Joe Biden's stimulus package, which would mean potentially $1,400 checks for Americans. So we have an article exploring what that would mean. Check that out. Again, it's on tcsnetwork.co.uk. And the last one is, of course, this EU-UK vaccine row. Vaccine nationalism is a term that's been created in the news not too long ago. I don't really want to talk about vaccine nationalism, if I'm honest, because it gets me just way too passionate. And I think we want to talk to our guest. So I'm going to bring on David, who is he's a self-described tinkerer and a strategist, right? And he's a serial entrepreneur. He traded corporate law for tech. And he's someone who has this insatiable passion for personal development, for living better, for doing better. And he's also a polymath. And I want to explore this polymath term because it's something you may have heard. I've used the term multiple times too. So let's dive into that a bit. So welcome to the show with me. When people say welcome with me, what are you meant to do? Clap? I don't know. But whatever you do, virtual, heart, like, whatever it is, welcome David to the show. Hey, David, how are you doing?
I am good, thanks. How are you?
I am great. I like your setup there. You got different colors. I saw earlier you had a yellow mug as well.
Yes, yeah, I do. Got it here.
Keep
things bright.
Yeah, you've got this thing going on. So tell me a bit more about you, because I've just read a couple of lines out there. That you traded corporate law for tech. What does that mean? Like, what actually happened?
Sure. What happened is a good question. Essentially, I think throughout school and even in the early days of university, corporate law was like my dream job, and it's exactly what I thought I wanted to do. And I think that is the same story for a lot of young people as well. But the reality is, I think when I got there, I got into one of my dream firms, a really great corporate firm in the city, and I was there. I was working on cases that I loved working on. So I was doing finance and banking law, and I really enjoyed it. It was awesome. The work was awesome. The life that comes along with it, and I think part of the sacrifices you have to make over the course of years. At the beginning, so generally, I was on a slightly different route, but typically you come in, you do like a 2-year training contract, and then you qualify, blah, blah, blah. But I think that in that first 2 years, you have an enormous drive and push because you need to prove yourself because you've just got here, especially if you're black or young and you have some imposter syndrome. You feel like you have to prove yourself. In the years after that, so I was there for almost 5 years, you kind of you get more lethargic because you don't have to prove yourself anymore. You get a lot more confident in your skills and your skill set. And because I enjoyed the work that I was doing, I felt that I was becoming quite competent at it. So it was a mix of one, getting to a stage where I didn't feel like I was being pushed or challenged as much anymore. But then beyond that, when I looked forward, I had a really great relationship with my boss. And so like you would just sit down and think, okay, cool. I can do this. We're both here working in the office. It's 3, 4 a.m. Fine. No problem. I can do this because I'm young and I'm in my, early to mid 20s. That's fine. You have a wife and 3 kids at home, and we are both here. Like, we're both here, and you're supposed to be like where I want to be. And so I think you get to a point where you're like, okay, in the present, this is cool, but in the future, the vision of what I expected, maybe becoming a partner or becoming more senior as a lawyer to be like, was not the reality. And I wasn't prepared to make those sacrifices long term. And I think a combination of that and really wanting to maximize these years now in terms of learning and development, I think was a key reason for me leaving.
Yeah. And how many years ago did you leave out of curiosity?
So not too long ago, just over a year, I think now.
Oh gosh, so you left during lockdown?
No. Okay, so the year before lockdown, so 2019. Okay.
So had you known that lockdown was about to happen, would you have left?
This is a good question. Long term, yes, mostly because of the job that I'm in now, which is a good job. But I think I might have milked it for a few more months to collect the money. But you know what? This is the thing as well, actually. So I had left, I think, in the September of that year. I'd been thinking about leaving from the February of that year. So I was already doing that anyway. In terms of just
you were already on your way out.
Yeah. So I was just staying to collect money and just doing your work, and you're kind of going through the motions a bit.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons that I thought would be so interesting to have you on and to speak to you is because you're someone who, I hate to use that term, but you do a lot, right? You do lots of different things. And I just wondered, it's a question I get often. And I think this is a good podcast to explore, I don't want to. This is not about multiple streams of income, folks. So I'm not that guy. You will not be. I have no trading group for you to join. There's none of that stuff happening here. I'm just interested in how and why you do lots of different things. I mean, it sounds like a very kind of stupid question, but I think it's probably important to start there, because I guess the assumption now in the kind of economy we live in is that you have to do, you should just do lots of different things because of multiple streams of income, or because you need to ring fence your finances against another pandemic and stuff like that. But on a very basic level, because you're someone who, I read that you have 2 different kind of companies or businesses, and I imagine those are the 2 you've listed. There may be even more. There's a coffee brand, there's a flight club. Helping, I think it's like is it travel advice and guidance for like millennials and stuff like that?
Part of that, but then we also run group trips. So in the first 2 years, we probably ran about like 14 trips to 14 different countries. So we organize those as well.
But yeah, before we get into some of that, so why do so many different things?
This is a good question. To be honest, sometimes it feels like I'm flogging myself unnecessarily. But I think part of the reason is just my personality. I like shiny things, but I'm also very kind of insatiable.
So you like shiny things?
Yes, yeah.
What does that mean? So does that mean you're part of Shiny Suit Twitter?
No, not at all. No, okay, sorry. To clarify, that's not how I meant it. What I meant was more that how I would characterize it in general is I believe in having it all. And if you give me the option of option A or option B, I will say both. And I will want to do both of them if they are good and they look fun. So I think that's one part of it. Although I'm really trying to get away from that. That's not how I want to be, but I think that's naturally how I am. Like I can think of a new project and be like, yep, let me do it. And I think I'm also quite a fast executor. So when I do think of something, I'm more just thinking, okay, can I just do it quickly? Can I make it happen? I think the issue becomes being able to find a balance and thinking about what you really do want, which goes to the second part of your question in terms of like, how do I choose what to do? How do you choose what to invest your time into? So I think I don't like the whole multiple streams of income talk either, but that is a factor as well, just in terms of not specifically having to rely on, your primary job to get money. And I think also when we talk about whether it's about saving or about spending, typically when you just have a single job, then all of your spending needs and decisions are based against that standard salary. Whereas I'm trying to move into a space where I can have a mindset switch, which is, okay, if I want to have this extra thing, an extra nice thing, as an example, I now pay for Superhuman, which is this email thing, and it costs like $30 a month. If I want to have that, I need to
heard
go
about
and make
that. So what is it?
an extra.
What is that exactly? So someone sends you an email about like productivity or something, right? Every month.
No, so Superhuman it's like an email client, so you would use it instead
of Gmail. I saw Ali Abdal talking about it. Actually, does it actually work?
Yeah. You know what? It's been a big paradigm shift because I heard like you say, Ali Abdal, but loads of people within the tech world, all of these VC people who can sometimes be insufferable, talking about it, and I really just dismissed it as one of these things that it's just for rich people. First of all, because it's bloody expensive, and second of all, because they make it really exclusive for no reason. So the wait list is like 275,000 people, which is very silly in my mind.
But what is it? What is it exactly?
It's just fast email. It's hard to quantify.
When you say fast email, what do you mean? Like, is it
they built it from the ground up? I think using a different backend, so it actually runs a lot faster. It's has a different.
Come on! What do you mean runs faster? Email.
No. Let me get to it. I'm saying that's level one. So on the first level, it is actually faster in terms of being able to search for things, being able to do things. Second of all, everything runs on email shortcuts. And so it's one of those things where I didn't believe in it at all. I feel like I'm selling some
you're not selling
multi-level.
It,
Look, when you sit down, okay, first of all, the fact that the onboarding is personal. Someone from their company will call you on Zoom and sit down with you and show you how to use it. When you use it, you will realize, and this is, look, I don't need to sell it. I don't need to sell it.
Is that what you're
I don't actually want to spend money on this. But the more I think about it, so initially when I signed up, I was like, I'm going to use it for a month. And then after that, I'm just going to cancel. And then the more I use it, the more I realize I can't stop using this. Like I was looking the other day at how I can try and do this using Gmail. And there are people like, oh my gosh, you don't need to pay for Superhuman. You can just add these 8 different extensions and each of them will do like one little piece of what Superhuman does. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to download an additional 8 things just to do what this does out of the box. So for example, you have like your personal email, I have my work email. You can switch between them. It's just as fast. When you hit the keyboard shortcut, it just happens. Whereas before that, I'd have like a whole separate Chrome window for my work stuff, then a separate Chrome window for my personal one, and I would go between them. But when you can just tap a button and switch, and then everything else happens with other taps. So like there's one email that I need to send to everyone at work on a Friday, and I just press C, and then the email pops up. And because I don't know, it's much faster than you think it's going to be.
I get what you're saying, but I'm just wondering too, like, so you said Gmail there, of course we should say there are other email clients, available, but I use Outlook, and with Outlook, you can actually just list all the emails you have. I have something like probably 11 emails, and it's all just listed on the left, and I can just switch between each one again with a shortcut.
It's not as fast. You know what? It depends what it means to you and how much it matters to you.
I know.
But what I can say for definite is that my thoughts on what it was going to be like before using it, I was very skeptical. And I wasn't even on the wait list because I just thought this thing is stupid. But then someone referred me, so I skipped the wait list and I tried it, and I was like, you know what, this guy was right, because I'd heard the founder on another podcast, and he was talking about it, and it just sounded not dumb, but he was being very esoteric. Like the guy would ask him pretty much what's happening now. The guy would ask him like a serious question, like what makes this thing so good? Like what functional reason makes it good? Yeah, he was literally just being like, oh, I wanted to create something that feels like you're on the top of a mountain and you're soaring like with the eagles. It just sounded nuts.
I'm not gonna lie. And this is probably a good injunction because we can go from here into kind of your curiosity and your interest in personal development, right? Because when I hear you saying what you're saying, so I'm a self-confessed kind of productivity junkie. I like that kind of stuff. I do way too much to not be productive. You have to be productive or you just can't do it. However, I do think, though, there are some things I'm subscribed to that, if I'm honest, I was spun on the marketing. And I've convinced myself that like I bought an iPad. I went totally paperless last year, where it's so bad that last week I got a letter that I had to sign, and I realized in my whole apartment I don't have one pen. I couldn't find a pen, and I had this kind of moment because I was thinking I must have a pen. I mean, but I looked around for a good 20 minutes, no pen. I had to go to my next door neighbor and be like, "Have you got a pen?" Right now, why did I buy an iPad? I bought an iPad because I was, because I used to have one years ago. Then I got rid of it, because I was only using it as a Bible and for church. And then I watched all these videos online from all these productivity guys who are like, this iPad just changed my life. And I thought, I want to have a life-changing experience. And before you do it, I had an iPad. Now, the gag is I still actually use mine every single day because I like writing. I like the kind of tactile nature of it. But it is interesting to me just how powerful like watching other people is. Especially people who quote unquote have the same interest as you, are in the same niche as you may call it. But also, it's like we're looking to save. Well, I say it's like, it feels like in the current world we live in now, the human desire, if you like, is to kind of reclaim time, to save time, to be quicker, to be shorter, or to do things, with less energy expense. What's got you so interested in personal development, such that you write a weekly newsletter which people can join, where you're giving them kind of free game? I don't know if there's a paid version as well, but ultimately, you're really interested in personal development, and so I'm not shocked that you use Superhuman. But what got you into that? Just tell us a bit. Tell the people listening a bit about that.
Sure, I want to come back to the topic of time later, though. But in terms of me getting into it, I think what it is first of all, I enjoy learning and I enjoy knowing. I think part of my mindset is that I think a lot of people are mistaken about. People think that, oh my gosh, your 20s and your 30s are these times where you do all these great things. And they are to an extent, but your mental prime is like 50. And so you have all this time before then. There's a really good book called Algorithms for Living. And I'm passing what it talks about there into the context of what I'm saying now. But I think that, people forget that before you're 50, really, you have the trade-off between like exploring and exploiting. So exploiting is like using the knowledge that you've already learned, or, like if you have to choose, if you want something to eat, do you pick something that you've already done before, or do you pick something new? And I think later on in life, you'll have reached a point where you'll have tried enough things that you'll be making much better decisions based on the experience that you've already gathered. But I think earlier in your life, you should actually be leaning more towards the explore side and essentially just data gathering. Like, I know it sounds really nerdy, but even when you look at AI as an example, you know, the quality of the AI depends wholly on the data set. If you have a bad or limited data set, your AI is going to be crap. So the more knowledge you have, the better decisions you'll be able to make, even if it's just knowing what not to do. And so I think that's part of it. The other part is, you know, so within that, I read and I try and absorb a lot of knowledge and absorb a lot of things. And I think that there's a lot of people that are really obsessed with, like, oh my gosh, the top performers and the most athletic, and and I listen to all of those people, and there's a big section of whether it's productivity or whatever that's dedicated to that. And in my mind, I'm like, well, no, I just want to have a better life. That's it. Like, I don't necessarily need to be the world's most prolific, this and that and the other. I think a lot of people just want to be happy. They just want to be a little bit more fulfilled, have a bit more time, be able to prioritize what's important for them. And I think that's because that's the person that I want to be. I think those are the people that I'm writing for more. So I do share some things that are leaning more towards, okay, maximizing your time, optimizing for this, blah, blah, blah. But then I think it's trying to mix that with, actually, you know what, you know, life is challenging and you don't always have to be on 100%, but how can you just make the most of the time that you have?
That's good. That's really good, because you know, the reason I asked that question, and to go back to the time thing we spoke about, was the fact that one of the major things I've observed, especially during lockdown, through questions I've gotten online or even just folks around me, is this idea of, even though lockdown for a lot of people was initially was all about kind of reclaiming your time. We all everyone stood still, everyone had nothing to do, we were all locked at home, and people were, you remember people playing tennis with neighbors, and that was a really nice kind of still period. It's kind of, it was a nice, you know, stuff. But us being humans, we found a way to be very busy again. And now when I talk to people and I ask, like, how's lockdown going? It's, some of these Zoom calls, I'm just so busy, I don't have time again. And you're like, how have we found a way, you know, to be super busy again? It seems like our addiction to busyness, especially in the West, just seems like it's just not going to go away, right? So I just wondered, how do you think about time? Because I know people have very, very interesting, you know, daily routines, as it were, and how they think about time, how they think about work and productivity. I was actually watching recently, and I hate doing this, but you know, it came up on my YouTube recommended, which is more powerful than you think, folks. I literally only watch what YouTube recommends me. Very seldom do I search things unless it's music, right? Anyways, I click on this thing. It was like, how who's the Apple CEO? Tim Cook?
Tim Cook, yeah.
Tim Cook. It was, how does Tim Cook spend these days? And I was like, oh God, here we go. Like, it's gonna be this hit. It's like 3:45 a.m. and then for 15 minutes he goes to an undisclosed location to jog. And I was just thinking, give me a break, right? Because this is just not true, number one. But it was interesting to see how there seems to be a consensus with all these kind of tech CEOs, especially the ones that dominate public culture. You know, they all wake up at 5 a.m. and then between 5 and 10, they've already done 5 hours of work. And, you know, so what's your kind of daily routine? But also, how do you, if you have one, and also, how do you think about time? And I'm asking this for people who may be listening to this, who are wondering how to optimize their kind of days and their kind of thoughts around time.
Yeah, those are both really interesting questions. I'm laughing at the first one because it's something I've been thinking about recently, and I'm starting to change my mind. Because initially, again, I'm always skeptical of these things. I just hate anyone that comes and tells me, oh my gosh, you have to do things this particular way. I think that's just my personality. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it the way that you've said. But I do think that as I'm learning, I'm realizing that there's trends and themes. And actually, what I'm realizing is that the reason there's that commonality, I think it's just poorly explained. There's an aspect of it which is this hustle culture, which I hate and wish would die, where everyone's just like, oh my gosh, you have to be hustling, you have to be going 24/7. The flip side of it, and this is the part that I am finding more affinity with now, is I just think you want to be able to create time for the things that you like and the things that you love and the things that you enjoy. And time is limited. And I think we live in a world where, like you were saying, we're constantly being pushed to sacrifice our time for, time is governed top down. The government tells you how many hours you work in a week. Your boss tells you how many hours you need to work in a day. And so much of your time is kind of given away or signed off or constrained. And so really it's about making the most of the rest. And so if you want to be able to do, depending on how much you want to be able to do outside of part of what's been stolen from you, you just need to find ways to maximize that time. And so I do now understand a lot more why there's this commonality of people that end up getting up at 5 o'clock. And to be honest, even when I was in corporate law and still till now, because of the number of things I want to be able to do outside of just a standard work day, I realized that I need to create more time for that. And I think that's okay, as long as you're not forcing it on others. I think I need more time in a day. And I don't want to say that's 24 hours in a day, but if I wake up at a certain time and I go to sleep at a certain time, that's my day. If I need more time to be able to do other things, then sometimes you can think, okay, maybe I can get up earlier. There's a really great image I wish I could share by Tim Urban. He's like this prolific internet writer from the 90s, and he has a blog, I think it's called Wait But Why. And he shared this image, which was really cool, where essentially he just drew blocks. He just drew squares, and each square is an hour. And then he shows you like what an hour of the day is and how much, if you sleep for 8 hours, how many blocks of time you have in a day. And then you just think about what you use those things to do. If you use 8 of those blocks to work, how many blocks do you have left? If you use 1 of those blocks to watch a show, how many blocks that you have left? And so I think that was a really interesting framework or conceptualization.
Visual representation almost.
Yeah. But then also when he broke it down further in other areas, and now not just talking about like work and productivity, but things like in-person parent time, as an example. When you break down the blocks of how much time you get to spend with your parents, you realize that by your 30s, you've already spent like over 90% of all the time you will ever spend with your parents, which is crazy to think about. But when you think about it, you have all of the blocks that you're spending in your first maybe 18 years of life, right? Every single day, block, 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 block. So each block is a day. But then past that, maybe you only see your parents if you've moved out. It could be at best a few times a month. At worst, maybe it's once or twice a year. And so if you're seeing your parents once or twice a year and you extrapolate that by the number of years and you're looking at the average life expectancy, really there's only a limited number of times that you're able to see them. And I don't want to make it sound morbid, but I think it's just this realization that we can often live in the present and think that everything is limitless. And I think sometimes you need to be able to just actually look at what your constraints are. And then when you have a good understanding of what is constraining you, then you can look at, okay, how can I maximize that? If you know that you're reaching a point where actually you've probably had 80% of your in-person parent time, how can I make the most of the rest of it? How can I make those moments that I do have with my parents, with my family special? And how can I make it meaningful? Because actually, even though it feels like you've got years and years and years, in terms of hours or in terms of days, there's not as much.
Yeah. That's really good. That's a really interesting way to look at things. It's one of the things I think probably people. I mean, there's this phrase that's been bandied around. You just can't wait to get back to normal. Everyone's asking, when do we get back to normal? Most news feeds and conversations around COVID center around this question of when do we get back to normal? And of course, the question is, what kind of normal is worth getting back to, right? Because one of the things that COVID's done for us, or for everybody, those who are willing to yield and actually do it, is force them to really reprioritize, as it were, and discover what really matters, right? What really matters. And so the new normal we speak about, should be tempered with an assessment of what kind of normal is worth rushing back to. So that the life that we live post COVID, and I know that sounds like never gonna happen, right? But it's gonna be with us forever. I feel like Donald Trump when he interviews people during that. Not gonna happen. But the life we live after should be one that hopefully we feel we have more kind of control over. I've written about this extensively as well. Actually, when I think about it, this idea of time and reclaiming time and slowing down and busyness and all these kind of things. You know, what I thought I would ask you, even as we kind of think about coming out of lockdown, is so you're an entrepreneur. You've got businesses on the side. Have they been affected by lockdown? What's happened to them? And coming out of lockdown, is it sustainable? Do you think? Sounds like I'm your therapist. Is the way you're living sustainable? What I mean is, do you think is what you're doing now something you'd advocate for other people? This idea of working a job, which I may be, correct me if I'm wrong, you may not be actually doing that, running businesses on the side, also kind of building a digital community, because I've been always interested in capacity, and with folks like that I mentor, that I spend time with, we talk quite a bit about capacity, and I think it's really important. I actually think, if in terms of my life philosophy, I think your 20s is really where you discover kind of where that line is, when you're like, oh yeah, I need to rest. Because I just don't think you get any other chance to do that, really, generally speaking, because by the time you're 30, you just accumulated so many other things, which makes it hard to really put the pedal to the metal, as it's called. So what's your philosophy around that, and how do you think about that? And I know people might be like, oh my god, I want to learn more, because you're saying so many different things. They can subscribe to your newsletter. Like they can get involved, and that's one of the reasons we have you on here, so they can find out and get connected. But on those two questions, David, what are your thoughts on that? Should I re-clarify them?
Yes.
One is, would you advocate the way kind of you're living for other people, this idea of kind of business, work, digital community, online personal brand, this kind of way of living? We've had a couple of guests now who all do that. So I'd like to know what you think about that. And the second thing is, I guess, just more generally, what's happened with the businesses and all the stuff you ran during lockdown, and I guess what's the plans after?
Sure. Okay. Two very good questions. The first one, absolutely not. I think that I think that to a large extent, and this is why I really feel that there's a need to be honest, because like I was saying before, people do all this talking about like, oh, what high performing people do. This is not for everyone, and not that I'm a high performer or anything like that. But I think that there is definitely some elements of the things that I do that are just based on my personality and my ability to be able to manage or deal with things. And it's stressful. Like, life is not easy and it's not fun, and a lot of these things are not as easy as, I know everyone wants to like promote hustling. I don't like hustling. I like doing the work that I do because I enjoy it, and I'm going to do it because I enjoy it. And also because I think there's positive externalities. Like, a lot of the businesses that I run help people and they solve problems, and that's what I love, and that's what I focus on. So for me, it's not necessarily about keeping busy. I don't want to be busy. I think I probably thrust myself into busyness too often, and then every few months I have to like cull the number of things that I do. So I think that I definitely wouldn't recommend it for everyone. And the reason I say that is because even when I write, I try and break down the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing. So when you look at the core reasons, those core reasons might lead me to take the steps that I take. Because I want to prioritize and value certain things, maybe I should do this. But for you, depending on what you want to prioritize and value, maybe you should take different steps. So I don't necessarily think that everyone should take the same actions based on the same core philosophy or thought process. But I think everyone should have some good thought processes behind making the decisions that they make. So I would definitely encourage people to think more about, why they do what they do, trying to make time for the things that matter, trying to optimize their time, because that's how you can do things that make you happy. But what you should do with the time that you freed up, I think, will differ for everyone.
Yeah. And the second question was about the businesses, because you run a travel business.
Yeah.
And What's happening with that?
Yeah, so that's kind of on pause for now, and possibly will be for a while. Yeah, kind of. No, that's definitely been paused, particularly since COVID. It's just hard to run. However, I do also run. Well, not run. I'm a co-host on an amazing travel podcast called Travel and Turn Up, and I think that's been a great way for us to keep in touch with the wider community. So there's 3 of us that are co-hosts, and we're all travel entrepreneurs, and we have other guests that come on that are entrepreneurs or builders or people within the travel space. And actually, it's been a great way to build a community around travel, even without traveling. And that's been able to grow a lot. And we're able to speak to people in different countries across Africa, the US, South America, and kind of build in that way. So I think, even when you're not able to do the business or the exchange of value in that way, I think you can exchange cultural value and you can talk to people, do things like that. So I started Democratic Republic, which is it's growing wider than what it initially started as. Initially, it was just about coffee. And really, I had a vision. This is from like 2018. I really wanted to be able to sell direct trade coffee from Africa. So we source from 7 different African countries, and we sell that coffee around to people, because I don't know if we have time to get into it, but there's a whole lot of things that people don't necessarily know or understand about the state of African coffee. First of all, people don't necessarily realize that coffee comes from Africa. Like, coffee came from Ethiopia, was spread to surrounding regions, but the rest of the spread of coffee happened because of colonialism. Like, the reason coffee is in India and all these other places is because those were colonies, like British colonies, Dutch colonies. Basically, colonizers came. They were like, this tastes nice. Let me grow it on the other places that I own. And so we've had this really interesting development of global coffee, but we're now reaching a point where, obviously due to consumerism, blah, 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 the cost is being driven down. And so now it's actually becoming economically unsustainable for a lot of coffee growing countries to keep growing coffee. So you have farmers in Uganda and some places across Africa where, even though it makes up a huge proportion of the GDP, people are just selling their farms and selling it to real estate developers just so they can get some money, because that is a better trade-off rather than growing this crop. Or they're burning it all and using the land to grow other crops. So I think there's also this thing where people don't realize that, okay, the trade-off of you being able to enjoy this £1 coffee from Sainsbury's means that actually these people aren't going to be growing coffee anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think it's educating around that and solving that problem.
I really do wish we had more time. I'm not saying that. When people say that, and to end a conversation, I wish we had more time, but that's all we got time for. No, I really do wish we had more time, because that is, and maybe there's a part 2 there somewhere, because that is interesting. This kind of consumerism and how all our consumer choices here in the UK, the kind of net impact they have, in other parts of the world. And I'm really interested on a structural level at those 2 different countries you've mentioned, and the unequal trade that happens there. So I really think we should probably come back and talk more about this. On this particular episode, that this is unfortunately what we have time for, which is annoying. But I do hope folks listening have, gotten some value, which I know they would have. From this, and if they're interested more, and I guess this is probably the good thing, is they can connect with you and what you do, because no doubt they'll find out all the stuff we're talking about in probably a lot more detail. So why don't you tell people where they can find you? Obviously not your address or anything, unless you want.
You can find me on the streets of the internet.
Literally. So yeah, why don't you tell people where they can find you? And yeah, people can rest assured that we'll have you back on for another kind of chat very soon.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. So primarily I'm on Twitter at Legend of Baba, and my newsletter is called The Knowledge, and a podcast by the same name. On Instagram, just call me Baba. I think that's pretty much it.
Superb. Well, folks, thank you for listening to this episode. Do be sure to subscribe. I have no clue if that's grammatically correct, but do subscribe, because again, we've got some great guests coming up, and today was great. Thank you so much, David. I learned a lot. I felt like a student. I was just sitting down listening to all the stuff you do. So thank you for being a part of this episode, and I'm looking forward to part 2 already.
Yes, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.